I looked into a camera and I said, I told my kids I'm coming home.
All right. Welcome to another episode of the Boots and Suits podcast. Again, accompanied by Doc, James Pitts, Herbert Garcia, USMC, myself, Ruben Hernandez, USMC as well. And we have a special guest, Angel with America Works out of Orange County. We're going to get a little bit into your background. First off, welcome to the studio. We really appreciate your time.
I appreciate you guys having me here today. It's definitely a privilege and honor to know I could be part of something like this.
Likewise, brother.
Yeah,
likewise.
sure.
Army dog.
Army dog, yeah. So
you guys say rah, we say oorah.
They say hood, right?
I don't know how to spell that shit.
You're right, but you can use it for anything.
It's all
You
good.
can use it for anything, right?
It's motivating, whatever it is.
Yeah, man. So Army vet, yeah, for sure. Service connected. Spent plenty of time both in states as well as abroad. 80 a mic. So I did truck driving in the beginning of my career. Ended my career as an NCO, but man, I went in so many different directions. I barely did any of that stuff. So was attached to a lot of different infantry battalions. Got to do a lot of stuff with protocol. Worked for some high-ranking officials, stuff like that. Loved my career. Did a lot of stuff, but it did take a toll on me in the beginning. So things that I'm currently working on: PTSD, TBI from back in '99. So
sure, roger that.
Nasty accident. So, but other than that, man, yeah, my background is really working with youth, human development.
Okay.
When I got out of the service, I worked for a military academy for 15 years as one of their directors. And so I directed youth and taught them everything about, honor, discipline, respect. So they gave me their boys and I turned them into little young men. Did that for 15 years. Got out, finally decided to make a change and start working with veterans because I started doing stuff in LA with Veteran Row. Volunteering and stuff, and then next thing you know, I found this, and this is what I've been doing since. So
that's a interesting. A lot of us kind of get drawn back,
yes,
to what we're comfortable with, right? The protocol, acronyms, helping brothers and sisters that served. Obviously, you said you spent some time in the sandbox as well, so you played a little bit out there. We understand, all of us understand what that means, especially transitioning back. Just a little bit about your transition. It sounds like you've done well, right? So we understand where you started, we understand where you're at now, and kind of some of the little bit of the journey that it took to get to where you're at. So that little gap when you first transitioned back, how was that for you?
that was rough. Like I think for many. So I'm gonna be upfront and tell you that I just became service connected. I never took advantage of any resource out there for a veteran.
Likewise.
And so when I came out, I spent 6 months just lost, man. I went into financial analyst work as I was getting my degree in business administration. And, I didn't know what I wanted. And then all of a sudden I found the academy. I get back in uniform, something familiar.
Yeah.
And that's what kind of helped.
Sure.
But I did that for 15 years. So I felt like I was still stuck in the mindset from being in the service.
Yeah.
And I never really connected to or felt comfortable going back into the civilian world.
Understood. No. I mean, preaching to the choir on that one. I know for a lot of us, it wasn't until we connected either with, a military organization or even some of the brothers that we served with, that we began to unravel a little bit of some of the things we experienced. And that's really where we saw the most progress, really, because you're right. We kind of tend to go in our own little silo, right? Try to figure it out, try to assimilate, however you want to articulate that. And so we go out there, we try to do good things. Obviously, we're all fighting our demons or what have you. Some go one direction, some go the other, and we all know what this means, which is never a good thing. But there is that transitionary period, man, of however you want to, describe it. But there is a transitionary period of darkness where, you kind of have to fight the past, maybe understand it, in some cases continue to put it away and not even fuck with it and just try to go on a path of positivity, get yourself squared away in the civilian sector, get a job, do right by your family, et cetera, et cetera. Sure. But it sounds like you went through that whole process as well and were able to find a good pathway, but it did require you to go back to kind of your roots,
yes,
and reconnect with those veterans and military individuals.
Yes. And it's interesting. I think for a lot of us, there's got to be that point, right, where you have to make the decision to go back and actually face those demons. And it took me. I literally put them away for years, and then when I went and revisited them again, wow, that was a hard situation for me.
Sure.
And about the last 3 years in the academy is when it really took its toll, because I couldn't figure out what the hell was wrong with me. I just didn't know.
Sure.
I was doing good professionally. I was growing, but there was something missing.
Sure, you felt a little isolated in some regards.
Yeah, man.
A little judged sometimes, depending on who you talk to.
Yeah.
Kind of little dumb questions. We call them dumb, but they're really not. From a civilian perspective, they're not dumb. They just kind of talk about and ask questions of what they see on TV or maybe whatever. But for us, we're like, man, did they really ask that question? Like, it's just there's a clear disconnect between the civilian mindset and those that serve, particularly those that served overseas.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, 100%. I agree with that, and I also think a lot of times in the civilian sector, there's judgment a little bit, and because they don't understand, they haven't been educated, right? And that was the hardest part for me. I was like, man, I don't want to be judged. I thought this was, I wear my honor on my sleeve, and I want to make sure that you understand that I'm an honorable person. But yeah, I might have a couple things that are not quite right?
Sure.
And so that was a very hard step for me to take. But I think it was just a doctor who finally pointed it out.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I waited years before I was in my 40s before I even sought help as well. And it was another devil dog that kind of checked me, chin checked me to say, yo, bro, where are you at with all this? Don't be a hypocrite. You're helping other Marines and veterans, get help, and then you're not even in that group yourself.
Right.
I know Doc's going to get a little bit more into the PTSD side. But yeah, no, first off, I'm glad, you found that pathway to positivity, and I'm glad that you were able to kind of reacclimate. That's how we met. We met at Vet Work over in Temecula. That's our cheap plug for Vet Work, yeah. But it is a great event, man. It allows a lot of veterans and veteran supporting organizations and companies to come together. We get to share stories. We get to talk. We get to have a beer. We get to have dinner, and we get to network, man. And I think that's so that was a blessing that we got to meet. And so yeah, we'll go from there. But I'll segue over to Doc.
There's a key thing that you both said, like, there's a disconnect with the civilian world compared to the military world. But in my opinion, there really isn't a disconnect. I think the bigger disconnect is in the military world, right? Because as a young soldier, young sailor, young Marine, you're taught the team concept, right? You're taught that it's not about you, it's about everybody around you, and you're fighting for something bigger than you, right?
Right.
So for however many years you spend in is that team concept, right? That you're fighting for something bigger than you. But what happens when that teammate leaves the team? Meaning once you're out. Yeah. The military never taught you how to be a lone wolf, because it's always about team, right?
Great point.
Now you got to go out there in the civilian world and you're the lone wolf. You don't have your teammates behind you. You don't have your squad behind you. Right. Now you're fending for yourself instead of fending for the entire team as a unit. And I think that's where the disconnect is. Sure. And it's like that same where like people say, I don't miss the circus, but I miss the clowns, right? You miss the brotherhood.
Sure.
Yeah.
You lose your purpose once you leave the team. You're no longer, especially like Herbert, who is Artie, he's not going to fire a cannon in the civilian world. Sure. It's just not going to happen.
He might want to, but
right?
he won't. Yeah.
So,
especially on the freeways.
Where do you go from there as someone that you spent your entire adulthood, pretty more than half your life in the military in this team concept? And then, everyone that gets out or retires, the grass is always greener on the other side, right? I can't wait to be that civilian. I can't wait. When you get out there and you're out there and you're lonely, it's rough. And that's where I see where the hard transitions come from. And my transition was the same way. I thought the icing on the cake, I can go do what I want, but then you're lonely. You lost your sense of purpose.
Absolutely.
And I think that's where military members are having that huge disconnect. It's not really the civilian world. It's basically we're not trained to be by ourselves. But no matter how long you do, you're eventually going to take that uniform off and be by yourself.
Yeah, we are trained, obviously, to work as a unit, right? You're right. I see that. And Doc always says some compelling shit that makes me think, and I mean that in a good way. Like, awesome, he has a real good pulse and a real good grasp on that mental component, probably because he was a doc, right? And he helped a lot of Marines as well in combat theaters of operation. The other thing that you said one time that was super compelling is that we were taught to embrace the suck, right? And I won't even articulate it as half as good as you did, but the suck is the suck for a reason, right? We have to somehow rationalize what we're doing, right, out in theater. And then as we get back, a lot of, if you look at a lot of the veterans that are homeless right now, in their mind, they're still embracing the suck. Yeah. Like they are homeless. It's a rainy day today, for example, in Southern California, which is where we're at. But they're still out there. A lot of them are still in theater, even though they're back here. In their mind, they're still in theater, embracing the suck. That's what they were trained to do. So that's a great point you make. We're we are trained to work as a unit. We are trained to bring our specialty to the group to make the group more efficient and to help us accomplish the mission. Absolutely. Right? That's a great point you make. And we're also, we're also trained at a very young age, so we don't know any different. Right? Some of us may have had small odds and ends jobs at, Carl's Jr. or fast food or what have you as a teenager. But for all intents and purposes, for the ones that enlisted at 17 and a half or 18 or, as a teen, if you want, or young adult, for all intents and purposes, that is our first real gig. And we're trained and acclimated to walk, talk, and think. In our case, like Marines. In your case, like an Army. And obviously, Doc is a sailor. But that's what we're trained to do. Yeah. And so maybe a question for you, Doc, is it possible to turn it on and off? Because essentially, when we transition back, they want us to turn it off. Yeah. Right? Like you said, Herbert can't fire, Artie in a civilian sector, but you had to turn it off, right? And kind of figure out how to not only survive, but how to progress and create a life here.
I think the hardest thing is that when, a service member gets ready to separate or is separated and they're out there and they're by themselves, it's definitely lonely and they feel lonely. I think, yes, 100% you can flip it on and off. They just got to figure out they're playing for a different team now. You know what I mean? That a service member needs to figure out, hey, I'm no longer doing this, but like all of us, right? We found a niche in working with veterans. Like maybe they just need to find their niche now. Yes. Whether, a lot of guys get out and be mechanics, they get out and open up their own shops, woodworking, whatever it is that they do, they just need to figure out that they work for another team now. And that whatever they're going through in that lonely phase of that first couple weeks or couple months or even the first year of separation from the military, that suck is not their life. They can choose to have a different life or a different path. They just need to get on that path and be dedicated to it. You know what I mean? Yeah. I just see so many of the service members that are just okay with that suck, okay with that lifestyle because they believe that, I served and I'm combat injured. Now this is my life. It's not your life. Your life is what you want it to be. Right. Whatever passion you have. Now that you do have a disability check that should offset your bills, go do something that means something to you. Don't go to like Home Depot just to work at Home Depot, which you see a lot of service members do, right? Sure. Like go do something now that you've always wanted to do. And I feel that if we can get that message to veterans and get them on the path of, do you want to be a car mechanic? Do you want to do this? Do you want to be a veteran advocate? There's different avenues we can take them to and get them to succeed. Absolutely. That will still make them feel like they're part of a team, but obviously we're not running and gunning anymore. Yes. Now we're on the sidelines repairing what the past generations went through. Yes.
Yeah, but to your earlier point, so Angel didn't even get a disability rating until later on, right, in life, you mentioned. Mm-hmm. What do you say to that huge cohort of individuals, of veterans that never went to the VA? I know Marines and veterans that are in their 70s, bro, and still have never registered with the VA, ever.
So the biggest thing with veterans with PTSD, what's the most common theme that they say? I want to be left alone. Yeah. I want to be left alone. Sure. Right? I guarantee you there are homeless vets out there that are homeless on purpose. They're living off-grid and they're left alone. The government doesn't even really know where they're at, right? Mm-hmm. They don't have mail. They have nothing in their name. Mm-hmm. It's just like being in the combat zone, right? And to them, that's their reality and that's how they want to live. They want to be left alone. Mm-hmm. And I get there's other homeless veterans out there that need the help, but I guarantee you a small percentage of them is because they want to be left alone. Mm-hmm. And it's the only way for them to be left alone is to be homeless, off-grid. Absolutely. And it's everything we did in combat, right? Especially the ones of us that deployed 2007 and later, not like the 2010 when we were living in cans and had Wi-Fi. I'm talking about when we were living in the dirt, sleeping in the dirt. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing they're doing now. Mm-hmm. It's just not getting shot at. Exactly. They still got to fend for themselves.
Sure they do.
They're super paranoid and, they probably have their little own space that they're protecting.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, they're still living that life.
Sure.
I totally understand that.
No doubt, man. No doubt.
That's one of the, it was interesting because we had a conversation at the last, networking event that we had for vets. And one of the things in some conversation we also had via online, it's bridging the gap. Mm-hmm. That's one of the things that now that I'm doing everything that I'm doing on a personal level, and now I can share it with veterans and be like, look, you got, we hopefully we can get you to start using resources, right? Mm-hmm. But I know what it takes to make that first step. It's horrible.
Sure.
It's very tough, right?
Very uncomfortable.
But that bridging the gap, and as you were saying, Doc, going into something that makes sense for you and not just going about, trying to find a small job and just kind of stay afloat. For me, it's been human development, leadership development, things like that. Those are big niches of mine, but that's what makes me super happy. And I've noticed that helping the individual understand a little bit more about himself, like I did for myself. I took 2 years off, traveled.
Oh, good for you.
Found me, and not the uniform. So I shed the uniform like June. Within 3 weeks, I was in another country.
That's great.
Just trying to figure out who this guy was, right? And when I did, and I came back from that, the more and more I did it, the more I shed, and the more I became a little bit more stabilized within the civilian sector, and I understood it.
That's great, man.
I understood my part, and then that's when I said, I'm a man of service, so I'm going to keep serving in certain facets, and then from there, I'm just going to take that and make it my passion.
Yeah, I love how you describe that, because you came back, right? Coming back means that you did put some things into context or perspective there, because I know I can tell you about 4 or 5 veterans and Marines and veterans right now that didn't come back.
Yeah.
They're either still living in Okinawa. I know my buddy, my road dog, if you will, is in Puerto Rico.
Wow.
Right, yeah. And I mean, literally, they're just like, hey, man, and living in the hills in Puerto Rico, like generators, And so, yeah, no, the fact that you came back, it sounds like that little bit of a break, if you will, where you can go find yourself, gain perspective, however you address that. The fact that you came back, I would imagine was pretty, how would you say, it was pretty necessary, I guess, and positive.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
100%. My kids saw it back. I remember coming back, and I did a course out in Big Bear, because I work out there with another company. I'll plug them later.
Yeah, right.
But they're all about human development and helping people find themselves right. And that's what I really want to bring to vets, because I want to get the outdoors and then the development piece together.
Sure.
But I remember probably about a year ago, I jumped off an obstacle. And before I did, I looked into a camera and I said, I told my kids, I'm coming home. Huge. It was powerful, because that was me telling my kids, I found Dad. Now I'm bringing the real Dad home.
And you were out for what, 2 months, you said?
I was out for almost like 2 years, man.
Oh, 2 years.
Oh, bro,
wow.
I
Awesome.
literally so I resigned my last job, walked away from it, took my uniform off, never wore a uniform again.
Wow, man.
And I shed everything. I mean, shed home, shed everything, and went for it. And I even Ubered for a while just to get perspective of how people think, And believe it or not, it did something really special to me.
What was the activity like? What was it? What was the catalyst that helped you?
Caused me?
Yeah, that caused. Yeah.
I needed to know that I was more than just the uniform, for me at least, right? Because that's something I had to answer to all the time, and it was very stressful for me, because there was always people asking me, okay, what about your military service, this and that, and that's all they knew me for. They never asked me about me, and it drove me crazy.
Sure.
And so finally I was like, you know what? No, there's more to me. I know there's more to me above all this.
Sure.
And take all the things that I learned, the positive things that I learned from my military service. It is very embedded, but I got to be able to now come out and be okay with who I am and what I'm doing. And that's what led me to do it.
Oh, that's great, man.
So, yeah, man, it was probably a very, very powerful thing. That first step was just fulfilling.
That's dope. Yeah, that's dope.
Here's my last thing with PTSD. My last little twist, right? You the common theme right now is the uniform.
You mean wisdom, Doc?
The
wisdom.
Uniform is a very powerful thing, right?
Yeah.
Because if you really think about it, if you think of the service member, especially in our generations, that we had sergeant majors, very high senior enlisted ranking people with PTSD, right? Because they came from the combat era. Think about them having severe PTSD and still being able to perform on a daily basis. It's because of the uniform, right? You take the uniform off at night, you deal with your demons. That next morning, once that uniform goes on, we're trained that we still have to lead, and we still have to lead these younger Marines, sailors, or soldiers for how long that uniform comes off that night. But then when the uniform finally comes off for the last time, right? That's the powerful thing right there. That's when the demons get you, right? Because there's no next morning when I'm throwing that uniform on and I'm going to go lead.
Yes.
Now you're by yourself with them. And now it's endless time. And like what you said, you found yourself, which was the key thing, was you found purpose.
That's amazing.
Right? The key thing is purpose. A lot of these individuals, when they leave the military, they lose their sense of purpose.
Yes.
Especially like the senior enlisted, right? The guys who did 30 years, right? They spent their entire adulthood so far in the military. They're used to when they step into a room, someone stands up. They're used to when they're walking down the hallways, they get greeted. That uniform comes off, they're battling with their demons, and now they're a normal person again.
Yeah.
So that uniform is the most powerful thing for us, because no matter, you could live in the dirtiest house but have the most squared away uniform, right? Because that next morning as a leader, you were trying to outshine the younger ones, like making sure that you set the example, right? But then that uniform comes off for the last time, and it's all gone that last day, and we all dread it. And if we think about it, we put all the service members through TAPS, what we used to call TAPS or TRS, right?
Yeah, TRS.
Basically, they learn how to go do an interview, they learn how to write a resume, they learn LinkedIn, and they learn how to look for jobs. But there's no course on teaching them, you need to find your why. And then once you find your why, we need to find your niche or where you're going to go to in the civilian world. If we did that right off the bat and sent them once the uniform came off and sent them right into a school to get them to where they have passion towards, that would decrease a lot of the suicides.
Sounds like that's solid advice, because, if you are, blessed enough to have, some money coming in, like if you have a rating, money coming in, then you do have the luxury in some cases of doing something that you are passionate about, as opposed to my generation where we didn't have that. The VA wasn't doing, the ratings they were doing ratings at that time, but if it wasn't directly related to service, and a lot of that stuff comes out after, years later, right? Like the Gulf War syndrome, all that bullshit. But for the ones that have that money coming in on a monthly, they do have the opportunity to pick something that they are passionate about and still not compromise, their livelihood. Is that what you're saying?
You're giving them purpose, right?
Yeah, that's great, man. It's great advice.
That they want.
It's great advice.
It's not, okay, let me go interview at this job that I don't even really want to do. It pays well, but it'll keep me afloat.
Yes.
It's more like, hey, dude, go to school if you want to go to school to get to that point. But there's no one teaching them. Like, we all had career counselors or counselors, like you guys had career planners in the Marine Corps, right? Their job was to put you on a path to success. But there's no one putting these people on a path to success as they're separating on retirement.
Yeah, man, that's a great point.
One key point that you've made, and it's pretty funny, right? Because you can wrap all of these things. If you go back to prior to even our service, as little boys, and even in here, our kids are doing what? Playing sports. They're united in a unit, right? They have people surrounding them. They have coaches pushing them. They have their teammates who they have to compete with. They join the service. Same thing. Now you got your squad, your fire team, and you're moving up in the ranks. I think the biggest downfall is when you transition. That is the first time that for some of us in our entire lives, no matter how long we served, now we're 38 years old, and now we're alone. For the first time, because we've always had our soccer team, our football team, my skater buddies, my guys that I built cars with, whatever the case may be. Now I'm alone, and everybody's like, "Congrats, dude, you're 100%." Like, it's a blessing. And you go home, and you can hear these podcasts and like, "Oh yeah, you need a purpose." But if you're at home and you're by yourself, you have to take that first step, right? You got to take that first step to go somewhere and realize that for me to get to my purpose, I have to, get myself out of being alone. Because when you're alone, there's nothing you can tell me to get me out of that spot. You're just there, dark, right? It takes that friend, that buddy that's going to get you to come out and then be able to go to a vet works or to go to something and then get you plugged in. But I think that's a big downfall is with that combat generation, we all went through counseling, right? We were told, hey, one, you're getting on a med board. You're no longer good enough to be a service member, right? Even though they said you're getting your benefits, for a lot of us, it was a blow. We just lost our career, everything we've worked for because of the monster that you created by sending me to combat. Now I'm no longer good enough to be in this organization. You're cutting me a check and telling me to go home. You gave me a bag of pills, and I have a medical record full of documentation that says that I don't fit in with the civilian world and I can't hold down a job. So what do you want me to do now? Right? And then until we get like-minded individuals who have walked down that road to recovery and that pathway and have found their way and go, hey, dog, check this out. This is what worked for me. And then you have to hold that dude like he's a pack and put him on, and you got to carry him because at some point in there, if you drop him, he's not just falling back to where he was. He's going to fall deeper. Exactly. Because now it's just one more organization or one more person that has added to that feeling of I'm not good enough, right? So it is a big thing, that unity, that community. Like, that's been the biggest thing that I've known in my recovery is the more that I connect with my friends, with like-minded individuals, people who are doing what ideally I wanted to do in life, that's what's going to get you out of that hole.
Absolutely.
You can talk to a vet. Like, we've had those conversations. A vet will make it through a 30-minute interview, and you're like, dude, that dude's good to go.
Sure.
And then he goes home and he's down in a bottle, right? Because we're good at that. We can mask it. We can fake it till you make it. I can show up and fake the funk in front of my Marines, but it's that aftermath. Is how do we get them out of there, right? Like,
Absolutely.
we talked before this thing started, and it's oh man, like I'd be homeless. Like, I know it sounds crazy, but for us,
Sure.
that's not a bad life.
Right.
Yeah.
It's really not, I mean, it's
really
doable
not.
for sure. I mean,
I live in the woods.
we've done worse, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
we've done worse.
Yeah.
You know?
So I think that is a big thing, is wanting that purpose, wanting that recovery. You know, kind of the thing that you said is, I know I went through it. You get to a point where you're just tired, right?
Yeah, man.
Like,
Sure,
I'm tired
yeah.
of this.
Fatigued,
like,
man.
For my family, for my kids, for my wife, for my friends, for myself. Like, it just gets old and heavy, and you're like, I'm done. Like, something needs to figure it out, and I'm going to go test the waters, and I'm just going to keep going. And luckily, you surround yourself with the right people. They'll keep you going.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big thing is for a lot of people is take that first step, start figuring out what it is that you want for yourself outside of your family, outside of everything. Because if you're not good, you can't be good to
anybody else.
Anybody else,
Absolutely,
brother.
brother.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I love how the conversation is literally advocacy for
Sure.
all of our brothers.
Sure it is.
And that's what I love about these types of podcasts, because it's so important not only for them to hear it, but and I'm very, very, I will say, I'll continue to say it, man. I will definitely be an advocate, because now that I haven't figured it all out, but I figured out how to leave something behind and jump into something that makes, that's purposeful.
Sure.
And along with all the other things in that, like you were saying, absolutely, man. It's so relieving.
Sure.
I would tell you, I've been on other podcasts for other things. This is probably one of the first podcasts where I feel like at home.
Yeah, good.
It's
yeah,
amazing.
That's,
Yeah.
I'm glad, man.
Yeah.
I really am, because this was something that came together organically. You know, this wasn't the master plan or a business plan. It was something where we kind of found each other, and even though we're from different eras, which is actually a benefit, because we can relate to veterans from different eras. But like, if you look at my dad's era, he did 2 tours in Nam. I know your dad was a Master Chief as well. Back then they never talked about their time in Vietnam or if they were older, Korea or what have you. We wanted to change that paradigm. We wanted to say, we don't have to apologize for serving, and we don't have to apologize for some of the shit that we had to do in theater of operation. Very difficult to do, but like you said, being together and knowing that they understand was very, very much a part of, like you said, feeling comfortable enough to start talking. I can tell you firsthand, I have probably improved the most since I met these two. Honestly, hell yeah, because I waited. I was stubborn, hardhead, from Rubidoux, my cheap plug for Rubidoux. But we grew up, very much no excuse mentality. Even as a kid, get shit done no matter what, whether you play sports, no excuses. But no, seeking help, talking about your shortcomings, talking about your past, just wasn't part of how we grew up. You handle your shit, you keep it to yourself, and you just show up every day.
Yeah, lock it up.
Lock and load every day, lock and load, like you said, every day. You find this, but coming together like this, you find a, I can't say solution, but you find almost a solace, like almost a way of not feeling judged, as you mentioned.
Yes.
Right,
think
by being around other people that understand. I'm sorry.
Like, the goal isn't. It's pretty crazy to caveat off what you said about the older generation. Vietnam vets not talking about it and things like that. But for their families and the community, there's nothing really positive that you can say about that generation, because that's how they were looked at. Like, kids of Vietnam vets are like, my dad wasn't a nice guy. He was,
Sure.
he wasn't a mentor. He wasn't a father. He wasn't a nurturer. He was a Vietnam vet. And that's how everybody knows them. Where now, like, cool, I'm an Iraq vet, but I'm still a father. I got to raise my son to be a good person. I'm not going to hide behind I'm a combat vet. Let me just yell at him and treat him like crap.
Sure.
And then now he's scarred for life, right?
Yeah.
I have to break, just like an alcoholic has to break that chain
Break
in their
that
family.
cycle. Correct.
That cycle.
Correct.
Like, that's what the goal is for us to no longer be the monsters from the past war, right? Like, that everybody's like, oh, it's another vet. Oh, look at that dysfunctional vet. Yep, he's got his T-shirt and his hat, and he's got his little ribbons and everything. Like, stay away from him. Like, we have other things that we need to do. Like this generation, and that's kind of my biggest thing is life has changed so much for this next generation and our kids that we don't have time to hide behind our combat experiences and our little demons. Is we have to get better. We have to progress to be able to help this future generation overcome what this nation is turning into, what this world is becoming, a lot of, evil things that are happening. We need to be the ones to be there for them.
Yeah, I mean, you hit that on the head, Herbert. Like, I mean, I don't think I've ever heard it articulated that way. You have a whole generation. Let's just take the Vietnam, the veterans that served in Vietnam, for example. Man, I mean, coming back from that, I don't want to be too derogative, but coming back from that bullshit, right, and trying to come back to a society that spit on you. At least in our generation, in the storm, we got parades, right? We didn't have a lot of VA support, but we had parades, right? And then coming back to, your all's generation, where now you have organizations to help mitigate a lot of the issues that we experienced. But the Vietnam veterans didn't even have a PTSD diagnosis in that era. Mm-hmm. That shell shock, I don't even know what the hell that means.
Yeah, it was diagnosed as shell shock.
Shell shock. That's your diagnosis. You have shell shock.
Mm. I mean, they didn't have.
What the hell does that mean?
They didn't even have TBI diagnosis until like 06, 07. Right?
Yeah.
So like those of us that were there in 03, 04, next to these controlled deaths, thinking that we're cool standing next to a controlled death within the danger zone, right?
Exactly, man.
And then you get rocked,
Yeah.
And now we have TBIs,
yeah,
and it's a cascading effect. I was listening to a podcast from Navy SEAL, which it is so true. He was talking about breaching, right? And it's the same thing when you breach in the Marine Corps, right? What's the 3 words that they say when you breach? Execute, execute, execute. Mm-hmm. If we could teach these veterans every morning when you wake up, that should be the first 3 words in your mind: execute, execute, execute.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
you execute your daily plan. You execute what your goals are. And just to have that mindset, because like what we went back and talked about, enjoying the suck is they enjoy the suck because they're comfortable there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anything else makes them uncomfortable going out in public. But you got to start testing those waters, right? You got to start being uncomfortable in order to grow.
Yes.
And that the common theme, and it stuck with me. Like every morning I've been saying execute, execute, execute. Like thinking about my daily plan, because there's some days where I don't want to get out of bed. I didn't go to sleep until late. It's raining today. I wanted to stay home. But you got to execute your plan,
Sure,
Absolutely.
So it's funny you said enjoy the suck. It's funny because we had to learn to embrace it first, right? By the time you enjoy it, you're fucked. like
it's like no going back.
That means you're institutionalized, right? If you enjoy the suck, that means, and you can't function without the suck, that's a problem. That's deep. That's deep. It's funny you said that right now. Just like, well, they embrace the suck. It's like, yeah, we embrace it, but damn, do we have to enjoy this shit? I'd be honest, I hate it. I'm not saying. I mean, I found value in serving with my brothers out there, but to say that I enjoyed that shit, I hated it.
I think it's like we also in the service you embrace, that if you did go through something tough, it's a good story to tell. It's a good, it's a badge of honor, right? But I think behind closed doors, man, there's a lot of guys that they could probably talk about that, but damn, it beat them up.
Oh, sure did.
Right.
Sure did.
And so
you said fatigued earlier. Yeah, you're fatigued.
Done. Just done. Yeah.
I mean, and for those that served, 5 tours. I mean, 4 tours. I mean, that's a lifelong worth of obviously great service and appreciated service. But man, that's some shit right there.
So everything like the doc covered. It's funny. One of my best friends he just retired in December. Sergeant Major. And 30 years of service, honorable and everything else. But I've had the privilege to know even high-ranking officers who have retired and stuff like that, and I've seen the progression from when they got out. Mm-hmm. And I think that was one of the catalysts behind my step. Is like, it don't matter what level, and no matter what you did. Oh my gosh, this is like no joke. Yeah, so now doing what I do with homeless veterans, I really try to connect with those who honestly believe that they do not deserve anything.
100%.
And I always say, and I that was me. I used to be like, look at me, I'm fine. I'm doing this. Nope.
Yeah.
And I was walking around with an invisible crutch, man, for a long time.
Sure.
And so now I'd love to be that advocate that says, hey, you serve, man.
That's great. Let's get
it.
We need it, brother. The other compelling thing that Doc said too right now is that when you wake up in the morning, there needs to be a morning routine that prepares you for all the shit you're going to see that day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? A lot of times we just wake up and feel like we can just show up. A lot of us have to get up, pray, incantation, meditation, whatever you're into, to prep that mind for all the stuff you're going to experience on that day. For the people that might even cut you off on the freeway or while you're riding your Harley, and not lose it.
Yeah.
Right. I think a lot of civilians don't really understand, that when you look at triggers like that, it could be anything. It could be a smell. It could be some encounter you have with somebody else that was unanticipated. You could be getting gas at Costco and some fool cut you off and something crazy, And so you said, it is. There has to be some sort of a morning routine that, veterans use to prepare themselves for that day.
But I think it's not even just veterans in general. I mean, if you look at the civilian population too, those people that are running rampant, at the end of the day, I think just as human beings, we do need a purpose. Sure. We do need a schedule. And, we've had that conversation. It's hard, especially when you transition out. And now, you're getting a paycheck because of your benefits. But as a person, like especially as a man, if you're not earning and you're watching your buddies on social media who are out in the field and they're still shooting cannons, they're on deployment, they're getting promoted, you're seeing your neighbors leave for work, like we've talked about, like you're out there with your cup of coffee watching all the cars leave and you're like, all right, I guess I'm going to take this dog for a walk again, and then you're talking to your dog like, man, this sucks. Like,
so you would see them on social media? Is that
personally, and I think about it just in general, like with the kids, social media is a big impact, right? Because you're seeing people who are more beautiful than you, even though you're not mature enough to understand it's just makeup, right? You're seeing people talk about how they're doing great. You're seeing in social media, you're only seeing the best of people, right?
That's a great point.
So even if like a veteran who's down in the dumps right now, right? They're in their dark hole and they see this podcast, they're going to see 4 successful dudes sitting around a mic, laughing and smiling and talking about how they've overcome it. But at the end of the day, we all know that we still haven't fully overcome it.
Yeah, right? that's one area I'm glad we didn't have. Like, I'll be honest with you, we didn't have social media. We had sat phones, but we didn't have cell phones where we could just call. I mean, we were seriously isolated, which helped us focus, really. But you're right. I could see how seeing all this fakeness, right, where everybody's just portraying what they want you to see as if everything's perfect, when you know damn well it's not perfect. I think that could be a little mind fuck, if you will. I don't think that's a great thing, man. I think that could be a detriment to progress.
It's horrible, because I know that for many friends and fellow colleagues and stuff like that, as we were watching that online, that made it worse. At least for me, man, it made it worse because then you have outlets where they talk about all of these just successes. You're a badass because you do this or that, the other, and you start comparing. That's horrible for someone. Yeah. And I know for me personally, I did that. I watched how some guys were just killing it, and then I found out somebody died. Sure. They committed suicide. I'm like, wait, what?
When a day before they were portraying a whole new thing on social media.
And then that's what I think that's another big part of it was for me. It was like, okay, turn all this crap off.
Sure.
And go literally by myself to the middle of the Caribbean, go diving. One of my first breakdowns, man, was literally underwater. I was underwater about probably 60 feet, bawling like a little kid, man. And it was because for the first time, it was a French guy that I was diving with, and he's like, I'm watching you. You're not even enjoying what you're doing, man. And I go, what do you mean? He goes, dude, take your camera, take all this crap off. Who cares what the world wants to know about you doing this right now? Sure, it's about you right now.
You had like the
GoPro.
The GoPro.
I wanted to post.
Sure,
because all of the guys that I see doing badass stuff, to me was like, I'm a vet. I should be doing that. I should be just as badass. And as I'm getting older, where's that badass? Where's that guy that that could do all these things back in the day and blah 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 and all this stuff, right? So it's a comparison. Yeah, shit, man. As soon as I got to a reef and I just kind of was in, focused with Mother Nature, all of a sudden it came on hard, man. I came out of there and literally just cried for a long time until I finally said, dang, man, like I'm losing myself.
Sure. As a diver, I can tell you if you're it'll eat up your air down when you're 60 feet.
So I was like, I gotta get out of here.
You're breathing too hard. There goes your tank, man, just depleting that air.
And what a great symbolism, though.
It is.
If you think about it,
absolutely.
You're depleting your life.
You're depleting your life, 100%, man.
And then the next time I came in, I had plenty of air when I came back up.
Right.
It was amazing. I was diving with
you,
a group called Warfighter Scuba, bunch of veteran guys, and then also Sergeant Major, the guy I was just telling you about.
Let's plug that Warfighter Scuba.
Warfighter Scuba,
let's plug them.
So they're amazing because they bring vets who are disabled vets, and let's say they Purple Heart recipients, and they give them like a 7-day trip to Roatan to dive. So if they're not scuba certified, they certify them there, and they take them on these amazing dives. They're doing some awesome stuff in Roatan. I'm very proud of what they're doing. And because of them, I got to do stuff with the kids on the island because I'm a big advocate of working with youth.
Sure, that's great.
So then we connected the two, and now it's like a community of people that just want to continue giving back to our vets.
Great,
that way. Travel, it was my sanctuary. It helped me so much.
Love that.
I got to see another side of the world, and I felt like...
Another side of the world, and because the world is 75% water, another side of the world, right? Being underwater
absolutely.
as a diver.
The essence of humility and just simple.
Sure.
Life it doesn't have to be that complex, man. And we put so much burden on ourselves. So I finally decided to take the pack off and really just kind of hone in on me for a while.
Wow, it was very well said, man.
Yeah.
So very cool. All right. Hey, so thanks. I really appreciate your time. Obviously, we're gonna we'll put this out there. I know 100% there's so many other veterans out there that are going to benefit from this. Any other words, any organizations you want to plug? This would be a great time. Again, this was brought together very organically. It's grown, obviously, because veterans are finding, and families, veterans and families and supporters are finding a lot of benefit. And we're talking about things that a lot of times either are not talked about, or if they are, maybe from a different perspective. We're coming from the perspective of those that have served in theater, right? And as you mentioned, it's an easier conversation to have when you know you're not being judged. But yeah, any additional words of advice, any organizations you want to plug?
Yeah, first of all, I'll tell all the vets that are out there, I'm doing some great stuff with America Works to, put a little resource out there for you. Just know that you deserve it. Don't be afraid to come out and get it, because you deserve it. You did your time. And we're going to help out and link you up with other organizations that are going to help you get that claim or get invested in yourself and advocate for you. So there's people like myself. 2 more plugs would be one, Team SOAR for Big Bear. I'm an enroller facilitator. I work with human development, different groups of all different types. I feel that that's what's going to bridge the gap. Understanding who you really are, taking the time to work on you first real quick, and understanding the purpose behind it, the why, and then taking that step forward and finding the passion that you need, because that's your mission. We all need mission, right? But I believe mission first, people always, right?
Sure.
And lastly, this is probably not I'm an entrepreneur, so I'm starting a company. I just started a company called EliteBrothers.org, and it's just what I want to do is give back to the veterans using sales to basically generate enough funds to be able to promote travel for veterans.
That's where you found your value.
That's
you
where I
found
found my
yourself.
value.
So you want to replicate that for others.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
So I want to give guys opportunities to travel, see the world, dive, do whatever they need to do to find that time like I did.
Sure.
And I'm very passionate about it. So I'm going to do the rest of my life.
Yeah, I'm going to reinforce that diving side. If you haven't, I know I talk to people, and we've done some shark dives out in the South and all this stuff, and they're like, "Yeah, I'll never get under the water." But if you do find if you find it within yourself to want to do that, it is a whole different world down there, man. And like you said, no laptops, no cell phones. You truly find yourself.
It's just you and Mother Earth, and you're gonna find out a lot about yourself.
A lot about yourself. I think people look at those Jacques Cousteau and and all the shark attack. I mean, I'm not gonna say it's perfect down there, but it's not all that.
A lot of people think it's risky, but it saved my life.
There you go.
No joke.
Well said, man.
It saved my life. Man.
That's a perfect ending, brother. Yeah. So thank you again. Appreciate your service.
Appreciate you for having me, guys.
Yeah, likewise, brother. All right. Ra, are we saying oorah? Are we saying ra? What are we saying? All right, we're saying oorah. Thanks again for watching and for listening out there as well. We appreciate your support.
Thank you.